Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Erin Creighton. I'm the Assistant Branch Manager and Adult Services Department Head for the Fredericksburg branch with the Central Rappahannock Regional Library. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by John Bachman, who's a local naturalist and historian, and he's here today to talk to us about something very much related to our local history and the Virginia 250th, America's 250th. So take it away, John. I'm very excited for this one.
All righty. So you're going to advance, Erin, you're going to advance it, correct? During the program. Whoop, go back one. There you go.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, and I'll just say next or something like that. I mean, that's low tech. Hey, guys. Here's if you look at the title, you'll probably recognize maybe straight off one word, Fredericksburg. There you go. But this is a fascinating historical look at a industry that is virtually forgotten here in the county. And all of these things are going to be explained to you as we go through it. The title, Aquia Freestone Quarrying in the Fredericksburg region. Okay. And again, I'm going to we'll hold the slides long enough for everybody to kind of focus on them. But I'm glad you're with us. And I hope this adds a little to your cumulative historical knowledge. Next slide. Well, stonemasonry is one of the earliest trades in civilization's history. Okay. Next. Thank you. And with the development of settled agricultural communities, more stable and organized societies could organize and support and benefit from large-scale quarrying and masonry projects. Okay, quarry, masonry. Let's see what happens next. The knowledge and skills developed in Neolithic mining, okay, and processing of stone laid the groundwork for the subsequent discovery of metallurgy, including copper smelting and the creation of bronze, which marked the end of what is called the Stone Age in many regions. So what this slide is talking about is the processing that the development of mining and processing laid the groundwork for the advancement of metallurgy, especially copper and then later bronze in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean area. Next slide. When the Western Roman Empire fell, okay, building in dressed stone decreased in much of Western Europe, and there was a resulting increase in timber-based construction. This is just basically a warm-up for where we're going, but got to get a kind of historical context. Next slide. Well, dressed stone refers to natural building stone that has been cut, shaped, or smoothed to a specific dimensions and finishes for use in construction. And that just, that's so when you hear of the term, it's been dressed, it means it's cleaned up and ready to go for the stonemasons to use. Next slide. Stonework experienced a resurgence in the 9th and 10th centuries in Europe. And by the 12th century, religious fervor resulted in the construction of thousands of impressive churches and cathedrals in stone across Western Europe. So, this is looks like the 12th century. Things kicked off pretty much. Next slide. The Renaissance saw stonemasonry return to the prominence and sophistication. Next slide. When Europeans settled the Americas, they brought the stonemasonry techniques of their respective homelands with them. Now take a look at this as we look at these pictures, because each one of these is selected to show you examples of early stonemason tools and things like that. Interesting. The earliest colonial stonemasons began with unshaped fieldstone construction, but professional masons emerged as early as the late 1600s, particularly in New England, as populations grew large enough to support them. The first industry to take hold in Stafford County was freestone quarrying, and it was the county's longest lived industrial venture. That's a lot. The first industry, longest lived. Freestone is a type of fine-grained stone, such as sandstone or limestone, that can be cut and worked easily in any direction without splitting. Right. Okay, so that's the key idea of what freestone is. Freestone means you can cut it and carve it in any direction. The Aquia Freestone geological deposits form a narrow geological belt that runs from the Potomac River southward to near the James River and passes through the counties of Prince William, Stafford, King George, Spotsylvania, Caroline, Hanover, Henrico, Chesterfield, and Prince George. The rock is part of the Patuxent Formation of early mid-Cretaceous sandstones and clays. This formation was deposited mainly in fluvial deltaic environments that intertwined eastward, depositing sands, spores, pollen assemblages, and leaf impressions, indicating early Cretaceous age flora. So we're talking about 110 to 112 million years ago. Geologically speaking, Aquia Freestone refers to a type of sandstone comprised of quartz grains, rock fragments, and bits of feldspar and occasionally mica particles. Over time, these sandstone sediments were compressed and cemented together by silica bonds. This transformed the loose sand and clay into solid sandstone. Lithification is caused by compaction. The pressure from overlying sediments squeezes out water and air. The dissolved minerals crystallize in the spaces between sediment grains, binding them together to form solid rock. The sandstone and clay sediments became the Aquia Creek Sandstone, or as the colonials knew it, Virginia Freestone. The period between 1792 and 1844 witnessed the greatest nearly continuous activity in Stafford County's freestone quarries. Stafford's freestone deposits extended over much of the eastern third of the county, and the material was quarried from many different sites. Much of modern Stafford County is hilly and not conducive to agriculture. While there are pockets of fertile land in the county, much of the soil is poor and always has been. Instead of fertile soil, the county was graced with miles of navigable shoreline. And these valleys afforded access to exposed layers of usable freestone and granite. That picture that you see in front of you is an old quarry along the Aquia Creek. Those stones have been were chiseled out and fell down approximately about 30, 40 feet to the, and this whole area is a quarry for freestone. That just shows you the 18th century freestone pieces. Those are huge blocks of stone, by the way. The history of freestone quarrying in Stafford County begins with the arrival of Giles Brent to the colony in Maryland in 1649. Now, follow this, guys. Giles, that's the guy, Giles Brent, married the orphaned daughter of a Piscataway leader. Piscataways are Algonquian-speaking Native Americans that lived primarily in Maryland, but also came over the Potomac and settled in and hunted and etc. Had villages or these village sites in the tidewater of our area in Stafford up to the Occoquan. Anyway, Giles married the orphaned daughter of a Piscataway leader who had been raised, the daughter, by his sister, Giles' sister. So Giles' sister, Margaret, raised the orphaned daughter of a Piscataway leader in cooperation with Jesuit missionaries. So this is and that little sign up there says First Roman Catholic Settlement in Virginia. So perhaps you've seen the large crucifix on Route 1. That as you go up Route 1, there's a right after Aquia Creek or the Aquia Church historical area on Route 1, you'll see a large crucifix that marks the Catholic settlements in the mid to late 1500s. The Catholic settlements, and so there were Jesuit missionaries in this area in the 1560s, 1570s, 1580s. Anyway, so kind of a complex sentence, but this guy Giles is important to the story. Okay. Well, in 1649, Giles and his wife Margaret, settled near Aquia Creek. And in 1651, Giles began acquiring land along Aquia Creek and the Potomac River. And by the time he died, Giles held 4,000 acres, a sizable amount. He was very wealthy. One of the Brent's parcels of land was known as the Great Rock Patent. The land patent was granted to Giles Brent in the name of the Crown by Governor Sir William Berkeley and the Council of Virginia in 1642. So that's how Giles got the land. He got a patent, and the patent was extended to him by a royal governor, this guy Sir William Berkeley, and it was approved by the Council of Virginia in 1642. So Brent gets this huge patent of land. Okay. Quarrying is an extremely labor intensive. To acquire the necessary labor, Brent used both enslaved and indentured laborers within the slave leasing and headright systems. Okay. Stonecutters were often indentured or free immigrants. And slavery was a fundamental part of the economy of the society of the first families of Virginia. And Brent is one of the first families of Virginia, a designation that includes the family with many members engaged in enslavement and this practice for generations. So they bought into the enslaved labor issue. Giles and his family were slave owners. One of the account is a disposition mentioned he was much attached to his enslaved people, indicating a long-standing personal and financial relationship, and was disturbed when they were sold. Brent would also, as I had mentioned earlier, utilize what is called the headright system. Colonists who had been living in Virginia were each given 2 headrights of 50 acres. Okay, catch this out. If you were living here, you got 100 acres. Not bad. Those who in turn those who in turn paid for a newcomer immigrant to America would subsequently receive one head right each time they paid for the passage of another individual. So every time you paid the passage of somebody over, you got 50 acres. So you could see, if you had a lot of money, how quickly you could gain and acquire land. And remember, this is about quarrying, so we're going to get to it. Giles Brent the second, that's the son of Giles Brent, same name, and his brother Richard owned most of the Widewater Peninsula with its vast deposits of Aquia Freestone. Well, quarrying changed the landscape of Stafford County. Barges and scows would float the stone out of Aquia Creek to the Potomac River. And that picture is pretty cool. That is a stone barge. Look how big that thing is. The Brents would come to own most of the stone-bearing land, and they also had the shipping wharves too. So they had a monopoly on the stone industry though they weren't the only ones practicing it, as you'll see. Next slide. Now, this is a cool picture. This is a picture of Aquia Creek. Okay, you see that the land in the middle there between the two, between the two little blue areas. I got one at the top and then at the bottom. Well, all of that, it says today a marsh is the result of the erosion of sediments created for mining the freestone. So the freestone quarrying generated a lot of runoff and silt and sediments and stuff. Well, eventually that filled in that whole area of Aquia Creek. That was not part of the original channel. That was man-made, and all because of the freestone quarrying in Stafford County. Next slide. Because of the stone's availability, right, and the access via water, okay, the Aquia Freestone was marketed throughout the United States. So there are records that indicate that the stone was shipped all over to New England, south into Georgia. This is late in the 18th century, early 19th century, but the stuff was very popular because it could be worked and shaped so finely. And you'll notice those, I selected the pictures. I'm not sure exactly the picture in the upper left, but of course, we all know what the picture on the bottom is. And those pictures also show the laborers that work. This is a huge operation. Again, this is a major industry. Next slide. In fact, the little green dots there show you where there were 80 odd freestone quarries in this area. There you go. The Stafford freestone quarries varied in size from one man or one family processes to invested groups that could process tons of this stuff daily. Now, the picture of the little cave there, the cave-like thing, that's that first picture there on the left. That's a family quarry. They would dig into into the freestone deposits and drag out the rock, shape it, and then ship it. And they see that early lithograph there. And then again, the picture on the right is from Government Island, which we'll talk about. Next slide. In 1791, the federal government purchased 11 acres of what was then known as Brent's Island, and today is recognized as Government Island. And that is a really cool place to go to if you've never had a chance to explore it. It is, there are signs off of Route 1 to take you to it. Plenty of parking, even got some little bathroom facilities, nice. And they walk and the bridges and everything, very nice. And if you want to, it take you about maybe an hour to walk the trail, but you'll see the quarries and some of the other points of interest along the way that show you the quarrying that went on Government Island in the late 18th century, early 19th century. Okay. During the building phases of the federal capital, okay, Brent's Quarry was the only quarry property owned by the federal government. A few Stafford Freestone quarries produced stone products until the 1870s. And a post-war Civil War era boom saw a resurgence of quarrying Stafford Freestone until the 1930s. And this is cool. I don't know if you've ever visited Arlington House. It's the ancestral home of the Lees, and then the government took it over and converted it to a portion of the National Cemetery there. But Arlington House had these huge columns. Check them out. Well, the columns in the facades of the Arlington House are not made of real stone, but rather of brick and mortar covered in a durable stucco and painted a technique known as faux painting to imitate the Aquia Freestone. Pretty cool. Stafford County offers other functional stones for architecture. Along the Rappahannock River from Falmouth northward are deposits of substantial deposits of granite. These were quarried commercially in the late 19th and early 20th century. And there are two other types of sculptable stone available to the colonists in Virginia. Portland and Purbeck were the ones, but they were from England. But they were also there, and they're extensively used in English architecture. Again, they're freestone. Okay, this is a freestone. Portland and Purbeck stone. Okay. Portland ranges from a chalky white to tan. Purbeck is a pale cream, and Aquia Freestone typically gray or tan in color. All three types are durable and easily carved and well suited for architectural purposes. A likely important consideration for at least some potential stone purchasers in Virginia was that Portland and Purbeck had to be shipped across the Atlantic Ocean. Can you imagine? Take a load of rock across the Atlantic Ocean. The Aquia was easily obtainable locally and probably acquired at a less expensive price. Archaeological work at several historic sites in Virginia has yielded examples of these three stone types. Okay, so Portland stone was used in the building of the governor's palace or governor's home in Williamsburg. I forget where this Purbeck stone is, but it's in Virginia. And the Aquia Freestone there is being used now to renovate the Cape Henry Lighthouse. So those guys there are working in the Aquia Freestone. So it's still being used, but not very often. But it is still being used in historical houses and homes and sites. Next slide. The practical qualities of Aquia Freestone were adapted to many functional uses. Okay, that's an unfinished pillar in the middle. To the left, that is a huge base of a cider press. There was a huge wooden structure above it that mushed the apples and then drained the cider off. That's the base of a cider press, and it's immense. In the upper right-hand corner, that is, I believe, a gravestone. Lots of gravestones were carved. And then underneath that, at Chatham, that is one of those things that, when rainwater comes down and goes into a catch basin and then is deflected, that's a catch basin made out of Aquia Freestone. Next. Oh, can you go back, Aaron? I'm sorry. Yeah, the picture at the bottom Those are the pillars that used to be at the White House, and now have been moved to a site of the National Arboretum, and you can see those things standing there. They erected them. It's amazing. It's like, God, that's really, really cool. Next slide. However, Aquia Freestone is highly susceptible to decomposition and weathering, primarily due to its porous nature, a high concentration of the mineral feldspar, and a relatively weak silica or clay cementation. It flakes over time like that. And then the next slide shows you more of this lack of durability. Despite being a freestone and easily carved, it led to significant decay in historic buildings like the Capitol and the White House, which were built with it. While use of the stone declined in the 19th century, limited projects such as this one, the repairs of historic structures, as I mentioned, and the reconstruction of buildings at Ferry Farm, have continued to use remaining and specially excavated Aquia sandstone. Now, if you want to read an amazing book, I've got it here. This is it. The Great Rock of Aquia by Jerry Lynn Eby and Alaric McGregor III. And you can order it online if you're getting into this and you want to learn more about it. Is a fantastic resource. In fact, I'll admit I used much of the, I used a lot of the information from it because I didn't know it. And so this is the book on the Aquia Freestone. Those are steps made out of Aquia Freestone. And of course, on the bottom there you got the cider press early home. This is where, in fact, Jerry Lynn and Alaric owned that home. That's the first, I believe, is the oldest house in Stafford County. And again, there are the pillars that was referenced earlier, and they used as a base for a sundial. Crazy. Next slide. So this was a quote from Jerry Lynn and Alec's book. I thought it was cool to kind of, it says, that's like, take a look at the picture. There's the quarry at Government Island, a place that much went on then that is forgotten now, and not many people that know about it. And this was a statement from a waterman, a guy named Milton Dickerson. Okay. And that gives you the bottom line on that industry.
Wow, thank you, John, so much. All those pictures that you always find are so interesting. I had no idea that when they were replacing the pillars, they were keeping them and putting them in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go visit that. That looked amazing.
Yes, that is the National Arboretum, and it's a big deal. I mean, you can see how huge those things are.
I mean, it's just amazing. It's really beautiful. I had no idea that some of our freestone was used in such important historical buildings like the White House. That's just so cool.
And the Capitol, and throughout and up and down the East Coast in other famous buildings like banks and things like that.
Oh, it's very cool. See, history is all around us and we don't even know it.
There you go.
John, thank you so much for presenting today about the Aquia Freestone and the quarrying and the history that it played in our area. So thank you so much.
Sure. Hey, you guys have a nice day.